All right, everybody, what is going on? Good evening. A little bit later than I usually upload a video, but I wanted to see if anything else was going to happen. I think once you get to a certain hour of the day, it's really unlikely anything else happens. But I wanted to see, we are a West Coast team after all. However, it looks like today was actually pretty light. Today was pretty light. The Seahawks released 3 players from their roster, which means tomorrow is going to be the big day. Tomorrow, you're going to be looking at least 25 roster moves, maybe 30. And then there's going to be more stuff coming after that because you got to set the practice squad. You got to make room for players that get released by other teams that you want. So tomorrow is going to be the big day. Today was relatively chill. We did have a practice as well. I want to talk about that a little bit. But yeah, I was just waiting to see if any other hammers were going to fall. But pretty much everything was done in the early afternoon, honestly. So I could have talked about this a while ago. But so it is. Let's take a look at the 3 releases we got real quick. Please click the thumbs up button. Subscribe if you're new. Click the bell for notifications. Become a channel member for $2 a month. Those are the best ways to support the channel. So the first one here from Aaron Wilson, Alfonso Tuputala, was released at 10 a.m. this morning. That one was a pretty obvious one. He had no real chance of making the roster. I think he played a good game against the Packers, but it wasn't going to be enough. According to Brady Henderson, a couple hours later, Luke Felix Faulalo was released as well, a third-string right tackle, another guy who had no chance to make the team. So nothing surprising, nothing particularly compelling. This was not a difficult decision. He wasn't terrible or anything. He didn't stand out in the terrible department, but there just wasn't going to be room for him, and I think we all knew that. And finally, this was the one that came in the late afternoon. The Seahawks released Seth Coleman. Seth Coleman was an edge rusher who actually played really well in the preseason. He had one of the highest pressure rates of any rookie in the preseason. So he was making his case, but at the end of the day, there's just no room for him. And I didn't think he had any real chance. I'd say these 3 guys combined maybe had a 5% chance of making the roster. And I think they also have a pretty low chance of making the practice squad. So nothing particularly sobering yet. I'm sure those decisions are going to come tomorrow, though. Tomorrow, somebody who is a pretty decent football player is going to be on the way out. And it's a good problem to have, but that doesn't change the fact that it is something of a problem. You got 53 roster spots, and quite often you have more than 53 players you want on your team. So that's that stuff. Let's talk about practice today. By which I really mean let's talk about what Mike Macdonald said immediately after practice ended. Because there wasn't really a lot to say about the practice. It was a conditioning-based practice. There was not much of an effort to actually do football-type stuff. It was more just like getting out there and running around and doing more generic fitness type stuff. So there's really not going to be much to say there. What we are going to have are, like I said, injury updates. This is going to be the stuff that is valuable. And we did get some pretty good stuff. I will say, though, Mike Macdonald was mostly vague. According to Macdonald, Uchenna Nwosu looks great, but the Seahawks still have to play things day by day to see if he can make it back for start of season. So not really anything committal there, not anything indicating strongly one way or the other. He says they need to see Tyrese Knight get through a full practice before they can evaluate his week 1 chances too. Again, relatively vague, not entirely so though. As the the press conference went on, he seemed to indicate that things are looking good for Tyrese Knight. Like he is likely to be able to make it back by week 1. So encouraging. On Christian Haynes, dealing with the pectoral injury. And by the way, there seems to be a little bit of confusion here. So according to all reports, this is why Christian Haynes did not play on Saturday. Some people thought it was because, he's so bad he can't even play in a preseason game. Some people thought it was, they already know he's going to make the roster, so there's no need to play him. He was hurt. I have to believe he would have played if he wasn't injured. On Christian Haynes, we'll get a timetable here. We're still working on that. So again, not really much of an answer. At this point, there's no way Christian Haynes is a starter. So it's not like this is something that can affect the team immediately. But if he makes the team, and he could, especially if we don't sign Risner, then there remains a possibility that he does go out there at some point. So having him would be better than not having him in a vacuum, I guess. We also got this on Jonathan Hankins, but again, there's not a lot of specificity here. Jonathan Hankins hasn't progressed to football workouts per Mike McDonald, so that would seem to suggest he's not going to be playing anytime soon. So this is kind of what I'm worried about, right? When the injury happened, it didn't seem like a big deal at all. In fact, it kind of sounded like he was just taking training camp off because he's such an old player, and no one was really worried about it because he's old, and this is what older players do. But now we're kind of getting to the point where it seems like he might actually miss a little bit of time here. And while he's not a big part of our defense this year, we don't have a lot going on at nose tackle, and we're going to end up trusting some low-level guy. And that's fine. I don't have a big objection to that. That's the kind of thing that you do in football sometimes, and nose tackle is not a bad position to do something like that with, because it is considered to be a relatively low leverage position. But it does take me back to this offseason where there were multiple opportunities to seriously address nose tackle, and the team didn't do it. And to me, that was one of the things that was more bizarre about their offseason. There were things in this offseason that I didn't like, but I wouldn't classify them as bizarre. I understand it, I just am not a big fan of it. The nose tackle thing struck me as really strange. Just this push, almost, this desire on the part of this team to get Byron Murphy playing nose. I don't know why they would want that. They should be doing everything they can to avoid that. But anyway, we'll see what ends up transpiring here, but this does not sound super encouraging. Mike Morris is in concussion protocol, according to Corbin, so we'll see where he is next week. Concussions are funky, so we got to give this time to play out. Got to give this an opportunity to play out for sure. Generally speaking, in my experience, players miss like 2 weeks with a concussion, and then if they have another concussion shortly after, things start to really get rough, but usually it's just a couple weeks. We also got this from Dugar where he talks about some of these other players, but Torrey Horton was the one mentioned here more specifically. In terms of having Torrey Horton on the field along with guys like Knight and Nwosu, McDonald doesn't want to make projections right now. We'll have to see those guys get full workloads in practice. Same with Brandon Peely, who did suffer some kind of an injury against the Chiefs, I guess. We weren't told about that. That's part of the reason why he did not play against the, against the Packers. I thought it was maybe because his roster spot was safe, but apparently we would have played him if we could have. It sounds like that anyway. So we got that going on. However, McDonald later in his press conference did say that he believes that Horton and Knight are projected to practice fully next week. Now, projected is, again, another one of those terms that can be interpreted a few different ways and isn't very committal. But according to him, Horton and Knight, those are two pretty important guys at this point in time, it looks like it's more likely than not those two guys are going to get out there for practice, which means there's a very good chance they play in the they play in the opener. So that's a big deal, and that's about the most encouraging thing we heard today. Everything else was kind of vague for the most part. We also got some stuff about Milroe from McDonald, talking about his usage this season, and it's what you expect. We're going to have plays in game plans for Jalen, and he's going to rep those with the ones. Basically acknowledging that, yes, he's going to get out there in certain packages. He's going to do trick play, gadget play stuff. We're going to see some creative stuff going on with Milroe. And I think that's okay. I think that's probably the best way we can go about things right now. Milroe is a player that is not going to get on the field in a real capacity for a couple years. So if you want to get value out of him now, this is what's required. And I think he'll be pretty good at this stuff. I think this is something that he'll be able to do. Even if I don't think he'll ever be an actual good NFL quarterback, he should be able to do stuff like this. All right, and we also got an update, interestingly enough, about Riley Mills. Riley Mills, who a lot of people, myself included, have kind of assumed is not going to play at all this year, we did get this from McDonald. Riley Mills is doing straight line running now. He'll need to move to change of direction stuff and heavier individual work for before becoming an option to practice. He's doing a heck of a job, and we're hoping that we'll get him some point during the season. Now, that's obviously, again, not at all committing. That's not at all an indication of we feel great that he's going to be back by X, Y, and Z date. It is, however, maybe a little bit better than I was thinking. I don't know. He tore the ACL in I think it was January. So I really just don't expect him to play at all this year. I don't know if I want him. We don't need him. He's a 3-tech. He's a 3-tech, and we've got an overabundance of 3-techs right now. And those 3-techs are also quite good, so we want them on the field as much as possible. But at the very least, we know that Riley Mills is out there progressing, and there will come a day, maybe not this year, but there will come a day where we do need him. A couple of things that were off the subject of injuries right now. A couple of things that aren't even directly related to the Seahawks, perhaps. Dalton Risner has not yet visited the Seahawks. A lot of people thought that today would be the day, but he did not visit the Seahawks, so we don't know where that stands right now. We know the Steelers wanted to take a look at him. We know the Bengals already visited with him. We'll see what happens going down the line. I can't imagine this team feels great about their guard depth after that Packers game. Off the topic of the Seahawks, though, we did get this. Trey Hendrickson has gotten a $14 million raise for this season, so his contract hold-in has ended. So if there was anyone out there that really wanted to go after Trey Hendrickson, that door is now closed. I personally wasn't a big fan of it, but it was interesting, and it was worth talking about. But the door is closed, and Jacoby Myers has requested to be traded from the Las Vegas Raiders. Some Seahawks fans are interested, don't really know why. But there were some people who looked at this and got interested. I can't say I'm part of that group, but if you are, then more power to you. Okay, see you guys later. Go Hawks, going to go on Twitch soon. And yeah, a lot of stuff going on tomorrow.